Hello. I think I've got enough water in this kettle. At least that's what it seems to me. Hi. That ought to be a start, I suppose. Alrighty. Man, I'm all covered with soot and wood chips. Let's get these things to be on fire and then get to the Godot stuff again. I have an idea for something I can do. And it ought to be good fun to see whether that gets me anywhere. This ought to get going pretty good. Before too long, it's going to be no longer wood stove days. That'll be interesting. I'll get to repurpose that camera for something else because there won't be a wood stove anymore. Or at least it won't be in use anymore is the main thing. Okay, that ought to do. Let's get back to where I can see chat and stuff. I see a chat. Godot, let's go. Godot, let's go. Indeed. So with that, I still have an oversized face cam. I did that when it was dropping stream all the time for coding periods. Oh, I need to quit out of Twisted Wave and change over to streaming. Honestly, I could show you something before I do that. I've got this set up right. I need to run audio hijack and turn the converter up to 30 so I can use it with headphones. Yeah, well, the face cam might stop the stream from dropping. It appears that YouTube expects to see more motion, and although I can throw more bits than YouTube can handle fairly often, if it's over a background of coding, it doesn't necessarily do that well. So let's see. We're in Finder, and I probably will be able to hear this the same as you. Yep. So that's K-Station. You'll notice that it is a red dot, meaning that it is at least fairly high peak energy relative to RMS. That's how I measure that. I don't know where the size scores relative to other things. But I have this letter next to it now. That letter says P. Excuse me. That's because I've been measuring everything according to this new calculation. So again, the dots, this is one of the highest peak energy relative to anything else. But you'll notice it sort of has a clonking sound to it. It sounds like a bad closet. And that is because it's very high irregularity in the frequency chart. And I've been running all these through a frequency measurement and measuring how big the disparity is between their loudest bits and their quietest bits. That's what the letter is about. And as you can see, we can have a very opaque and not high peak energy K Cathedral 4. This was not considered the most realistic sounding thing ever. And indeed it is not. And it rates K, meaning that even though it's a very, very large file, very large room size, it has a very irregular tonal balance. And we keep going. Cathedral 5. Still not all that great. You might think so, but... And then I've got a K Guitar Hall 2. It is a smaller room, but... it does have a certain amount of realism to it. And then we keep going all the way up to the maximum setting for this new measurement. I feel like I should just adjust my camera so that I'm not drooping off of the screen. Let me do that. That seems like a fine thing to do. I'll give it a try. I have been adjusting so many things, and I still am. Oh. I've been adjusting the position of my little graphic tablet that I do for some of the plugin release videos. When I have multiple words to put on it, I like doing a Colin and Samir thing. Colin and Samir are essentially YouTubers. Pretty much all they're interested in is YouTube and getting views and being popular and talking to other people who get the most views and are the most popular. So they're funny. There's no content there. It's just they're only interested in people being popular. And they seem to have run with a graphic concept that you've probably seen in my videos to some extent, which is like white letters on a darker background, except for there is a word in there that is being highlighted because it is black letters on a yellow background. And the thing about that is you can imagine how something like YouTube would put like machine learning into the process of working out what's the best thumbnail in order to preferentially show those to people. They're very likely up to that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm fairly happy with that tablet. I always kind of wanted, you know, a Cintiq, a fancy screen tablet. You can get those for cheaper than ever these days. Don't have to go with Wacom for it. But the downside of that is, A, it's not as big as my big screen. But also, I don't do enough art to justify it. So I can't really justify having a graphics screen just for doing stuff. But yeah, I was talking about how I have new drum sounds, and I mean new reverb sounds. So I have a high score that was done not long ago. Got 2 new high scores, actually. And where all those other ones were much higher values, so there's irregularity in the way that that works. And some of them, like some of these extremely large ones, ended up having larger, better settings. I think partly just because of the scale. And then we have this, which is the high score. So the question is, how does this sound? I think it does a fairly decent job of sounding realistic. So I'm happy with this new measurement. None of my existing reverbs out there are using this type of measurement and grading, although these are all using many different types. Like, I am in favor of the large file size for incompressibility, and I'm measuring against that now. That's how I got these new ones. I am in favor of the color of the dot. Essentially, like yellow and orange seem to be sweet spots as far as having stuff actually sound fairly distinct. Here's one that is also very flat. That's what the letter says. But it's also very peak happy. They will tend to sound a little emptier. And then by contrast, here's one these are all going to have a slightly different tone. That's the high score. Here's a smaller one with a similar flat quality to it. I feel like when you push hard enough into the peak happiness, it gives it a different kind of tone quality, which might be an acquired taste. Compared to that, that's got more RMS, a little more fullness to it. And then we can look at some of the really small ones, because by the time we get into F, that's still relatively flat. But the dots on that is orange-red. So I need to put one of these out. This is really small room. And here's another. And here's another. So it's a matter of figuring out which of these I would like and want to use. Then we've got a larger. And a larger still. And then by the time we scroll down into the G's, we start getting more tonal characters on these. I'll get to chat in a moment. And then here's one with more fullness to it. And we can compare that against Key Guitar Hall 2. And you've got this one you've got. That is the best performing recent reverb on this new measurement chart. All right, so let me peek over at the fire, which seems to be going fine. And chat. Also, I need to set it to all chat rather than top chat. I will manage with people who are disruptive myself. I don't need Google's help. I don't trust Google's help with it. Yeah, so the Meter will in fact like tape plugins because that's one of the ways that old school music, particularly rock music, got loud, sonorous, ear-catching stuff. You don't have to do like loud upfrontness only by peak limiting stuff and making it all just smushed to exactly the same level. Instead, you can use soft saturation, which is what tape is, to go to moderately all smashed. That does work. Oh. Yeah, King Camel, thanks for the thought. I am not on Instagram or Facebook. I decided I didn't like them a little while back, and I haven't really missed them. And secondly, I have not really, there is a plugin which I don't think is current. I don't think this is out there at this time. But I do have a plugin that's called Limiter, but it was never very good in terms of compared to other things. There's a plugin that acts kind of like a limiter, and it's called Block Party. You might want to look into that. Block Party is meant to be a compressor-like thing that is also going for extremely loud at all times. That's not, I could look into doing that more, particularly since I have such fast, like, now that I have BeziComp and I'm doing things regarding BeziComp, I'm able to make it respond much quicker than I would be able to otherwise. In particular, I can slam volumes down quicker using the Bezier compressor because it will draw a curve down, like down and then flatten out. And the curve won't have corners on it, which limiters typically, since they have to react so fast, limiters will tend to have corners on them. And in order to do a proper limiter, what I'd be wanting to do is similarly to Block Party. Let's have a look at the code for Block Party. Let me see how close I got to it being useful for this. So this is what comes to mind as far as work I've done in that direction. See, it's 2019 I did this. And I'll try to keep things out of the way of the big old face cam to the best of my ability, which is going to be somewhat limited. I see I'm using my very-mu code. That's what, when it says mu speed, mu coefficient, that means I'm using my very-mu code. And yeah, I mean, Meter will respond appropriately to clipping as well. You don't only have to do like limiting or compression or soft saturation. The different kinds of peak management you use will determine what kind of genre you sound like you're in. Oh, this is old. This is using Float 64s. Float 64s means it's really old. But then it's like 7 years old, so yeah. And I can widen this, then it will flow a little better. We've got a target threshold. We've got a voicing, which is golden ratio, because even back then I loved using that as a kind of meme. It seems to show up very often. Tends to be a handy thing. We've got a makeup gain that is being managed by threshold. And these things are being compensated inside the loop, so that's interesting. I've got 3 stages. That's interesting. Okay. So, okay. Block Party's doing some weird, interesting things. That might or might not mean it's acceptable for you as a limiter. This is clearly something, I can see what I was doing with this, and that is getting very experimental. What this is a sequence of compressors, and the first compressor is interleaved in a 3-sample loop. The second compressor is interleaved in a 2-sample loop. So what this is effectively doing is it's getting this blending of compressors. Maybe I can even show what that does, by the way. Yeah, that's a weirder one than I would do these days, I'll tell you. Let's open up Twisted Wave, might as well. And let's open some kind of audio. I would prefer to go to my sounds folder for this. I'll see if I can find it. And I don't believe... here we go. Here's the same thing I always use for this stuff. This is the source of all those reverbs. It's very dry. And one thing I can do is throw a Block Party on there and we can hear what it does. May or may not be desirable. We'll see. But again, as far as being something that seems like it would be a limiter, so you're meant to be able to slam it like this. Now it's also padding the output. So we're going to loop those drums. Let's see if we can make it sound like I'm running them into a limiter. Although it will pad the output, so you'd be wanting to boost after that if you were using it as a loudinator. And then if I went to the Alien Kitten section, okay, that's too loud. So if I was using it as a limiter, okay, I'm going to loop that. So this is peaking. I can't really see it very well. That's peaking at 0. If I turn it on, however, it's simultaneously that much louder, but it's also 2.6 dB quieter. So, I mean, see whether this does things for you. This is not 140 BPM, but it's my Alien Kittens jam, so it does have a lot of bass. See, this is what we get. And then we're boosting, so it'll be a little bit louder. And if I apply that, you see that it is now louder. And then if I normalize it, I'll normalize it to negative 0.2. Actually, that's trying to go to true let's do negative 0.2 this. So we turn it to this. So that's somewhat loudinated. I usually use clippers for that sort of thing. And then if we zoom in, I'm going to have to resize this a little bit. If we zoom in, we'll see the dots here. Let's see if I move that over to where you can see it. We'll see the dots here, so it should show when it is more high frequency happy. And it does appear that we're not making the high frequencies go too crazy. So that seems basically legit. Yeah, so we'll undo that, quit out of there. But yeah, I will see whether I can reinvestigate that sort of thing, seeing as now I have BesiComp. Honestly, BesiComp should make it so, oh no, I went so loud that I scared everybody away. BesiComp should make it so that I could do traditional limiter things, because that would be essentially tracking the loudness over some kind of section, possibly including pregain, but possibly just having it be zero latency so that attacks would be somewhat hotter. Because if I do a look-ahead version, it'll be running latency. When I run latency, I tend to just run it, and I still don't have the thing where VSD is supposed to be able to declare latency. That's not in my toolkit. But that's as maybe. The point being, I shouldn't be able to use the extreme speed of BesiComp, which will normally cause it to go into a sort of space of making lots of artifacts. But if I take multiple delayed samples of how loud things are and spread them out over a small time window, it should allow the speed of transition to stay as loud as that, but still suppress the kind of tones that come in when you run BesiComp that fast. Because for a limiter, what you want is unreasonably fast release. You don't want it going boom with the pumping of the compression. For a limiter, it needs to be out of the way almost instantly. All it's doing is jumping in, and if you throw like a bunch of extremely loud sine waves, they should come out the end of the limiter still being sine waves. That's what makes it different from clipping. But it should be throwing sine waves at you if you're feeding sine waves in, and then it should be gone again just as quickly. I don't have anything quite like that. Block party is as close as I get. Hey, Grunts. Well enough. Well enough. I've been on a real death march for getting stuff out. I'm glad that Donut is going over so well. Donut seems to be working well for people. I am very likely to follow it with even more exciting things and see where that gets. Oh, there's a 461 update. That's weird. You can't see that because, like everything else, it's hiding behind my big old face. See, it says there. So I can probably follow up Donut with the new version of 2Tape and then still have other things. It's just going to be Donut showing up the way it is gives me the opportunity to follow it up with something even more startling. And I feel like that might be good. Like startling for putting out new things is generally considered good. And the difference between the previous version of 2Tape and the new version of 2Tape is startling. Part of that is because it's also using clip-only 3 on its output. Oh, I've already got coffee. You know what I've been doing? I have been picking up on not only having this coffee, but I have my espresso maker working again. Oh, you might not have to wait for very long. I've had an espresso maker. It's not a real espresso maker. It's sort of like DIY type practically. And by that I mean it's not a machine so much as it's a big contraption. It's the Cafe Latte espresso maker without even the pressure gauge. So it is a Cafe Latte robot. It has these like tilty arms that you load up and then you put the espresso thingy in and go with your bare hands. And if you do it wrong, it explodes. Well, it might not explode, but it would spray coffee all over the place. And it takes a certain amount of effort and attention to do, but it is still relatively fast. Espresso was designed, hence the name, to be faster than regular coffee making. But yeah. Oh, I'm not fooling. I can show you, in fact. Want to see what a Cafe Latte robot looks like? I'll show you what mine looks like. Like I have one of those, except for I don't use the goofy little thing on the bottom. I just make the basket go straight out because one less thing to rinse. But it's one of those. And I also don't have the pressure gauge thingy, so I'm never really quite sure what I'm doing with that, but it's been working okay so far. It's mostly about being able to grind the coffee to the right amount. You can get it in all these different colors. Like you could get a bright orange one, red, blue, whatever. It's kind of cool that way. I tend to dispense it directly into a teacup. Mine looks like this when I'm using it, because I don't have this thing on the bottom here, which looks like what you get in a commercial, like powered machine. Weirdly, sometimes, like that one doesn't have the thingy on the bottom. And in theory, if you did it like this, the coffee might go into that, but then it might spill over the edges because it seems like not wide enough. I have a teacup that I pour it into. Yeah. Oh, AeroPresses are supposed to be pretty cool as well. I've got one. I've just sort of not. I've gone off. Less machinery. You know, it's machinery, but it's made out of plastic and it's less interesting. All right. See you later, Grins. We'll see where this is all going. This being a day when this is definitely my week for kind of derping around and doing streams just, you know, to the best of my ability. I'll see what I can do with all of that. I have been redesigning my studio like mad. Here, I can show you. In fact, I can show you and leave that on. You can't see all of this until I go to main cam. But like this is plugged in. We can make patches with this if I move it over, so I don't have it on that. And blinking lights, a couple of keyboards, stuff like that. You can't see literally everything, but so I've got a number of things in mind there. And it all has its various challenges. Like, ideally, what I'd like to do is make music again. It took me years to start making music at all. because I would always be so afraid that I'd make music and it would be bad and people wouldn't like it. And that does happen sometimes. It was a real interesting experience to discover that when I made music more spontaneously, people liked it better. But that's not unprecedented. Like, I can't hardly sing at all, but if you look at David Bowie, Bowie's entire career was marked by rather spontaneously singing lead vocals on things and having them be enormously successful. It's probably, the spontaneity probably comes through in the performance very easily, but that is something that can be exploited. You can do that on purpose, just to have stuff be better. For me, it's not so much that, it's sitting down, improvising something on like a piano patch or something like that, and then tracking a synthesizer over it, tracking a guitar over it. All of a sudden, people are like, oh, hey, play that for me again. And that's neat. It makes me wonder what I could... So there's a bunch of things that float around in my head for this kind of stuff. One of them is I'd like to be able to do the kind of music that I grew up listening to. It's typically like prog rock type stuff based on rock instrumentation. I just kind of like those things. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, whether it's out of style or not. There's still nothing wrong with that. But one of the things that I care about is I want to bring all of these things to other people so they can do it as well. And part of that is stuff like, Analog Me 75, where the idea is being able to use people's samples or have access to, like, these are the drum tracks, and there you go. That doesn't necessarily do it, though, because if you just have the drum tracks, you'd have to do the mixes the way that I would do. So I'm interested in one of the things that is come out, the new version of Short Circuit. That's coming out of the Surge family. Surge being something where I could easily see making patches for it on stream. So if people really want me to make patches in Surge, we can derail over to that anytime. But that community is now doing Short Circuit. It's this fascinating blend of a group of human beings with a lot of expertise at doing software projects, but they are also leaning into like cloud code these days. And for me, that's just a matter of like, well, let's see whether that makes them stop releasing stuff or not. Because, that's a question. In my social circles, I do have access to other people who are working in my industry, and they're all over the map. There's few people who use AI as little as I do, because I basically decided, look, anything that I don't have in my toolkit that would be trivial for me to like go and ask an AI how to do it, I'm not that interested in doing that thing. I feel like it would just be getting me up to the level of a million other working coders who were able to do that thing this whole time. So why should I bother? Why should I bother trying to learn stuff that people learn in school trivially, which means there's cajillions of them out there able to do that thing. So why should I bother learning it? I should focus on the stuff that I do, which is less. For instance, let's fire this up and see if everything is running the way that I would like. Here's the video game that I made. That thing is a dangerous thing that will come and attack me. And my purpose on this, which is level 70, is to fly around and reach. Also, I can blow up asteroids, but that will make that thing become angry at me. See, now it is sort of orbiting me. hits me, I am dead. But one thing I can do, if I don't like being menaced by that thing, is hide behind a rock. I did not successfully hide behind the rock, but let's try again. If it can't see me, it stops being as mad. And the purpose of me doing this stuff, also I can go farther than one world size away from the angry red thing. That looks like this. You can tell I'm farther away from it because we don't see the red background on things, but it will gradually come towards me. And then my purpose here is to, I think I did not. Is to find the counterpart. That's the name of the game, counterpart. So I find one of these colored balls that is the same as I am, but I can't see myself, so it becomes a little more complicated. There's only going to be one of it, so it's not either of these, but they might have seen it. And in fact, they have fired a zap off in that direction. But that one did not. And angry thing is coming at me again, so I'll get out of dodge. So the idea of the game is flying around in this place, not getting killed by the thing. Oh, and I have also I can still apply a break. If I touch one of these giant rocks, I can reload. That's where this currently stands. Although the thing is attacking me, I might be out of luck there. So now I have to make a landing on one of the rocks, but I have no power to do so. I forgot that was part of the game, so I am now in a bad situation as far as game-wise, but there is also a tiny bit of gravity. So if this thing doesn't come and kill me, which it is about to do... Okay, I lose. I was playing on level 70. If I hit escape, back to level 1. Interestingly, I appear to have a very large number of giant rocks in this, so that's interesting. And then this ping, that I could probably have there be less huge rocks, honestly. So that's the one that I was supposed to go find. So now I get to move to the next level. Also, I'm immune from getting killed now that I've found it. Well, let's see whether we have these giant rocks in level 2. Also, if I hit escape, this happens, meaning I could have controls and things here, which I have not currently set up. All of these things are things that I could do to try the next level of the game. Are you slabs of cheese? That ping happening means I'm close to my target. I just gotta find it. Where'd it go? scary thing, but where's the one I'm trying to find? It's right there. Okay, well that's puzzling. Let's go over here and see where that one sends me. It says this way. Cool. Okay. It fired a shot in the direction I should go. I bet it's you. Yep. If it fires back at me, that means that's the one I'm looking for. Meanwhile, rocks are being blown up everywhere I go. Escape for next level. I do have various bugs going on. Up, it says, oh, this is the one that I want. Okay. Next level. I don't have that solved yet. I really could do with having some of these rocks be smaller for the initial look. Okay, how about you? What do you say? Go this way. Will do. Up. I see one. I bet it's this one. Meanwhile, the shots are going to blow up some of these giant rocks. The subterranean thunder of that means I blew up a very big rock. Oh, and there is an artifact there. That flashing is some kind of bug. So, some of the things that I'm thinking about are adding more to this environment. And I think the first thing I'm going to want to do is cut down the size of these rocks and have them not be the only features in this situation. Because like we do have this, oh, and now I'm out of power. See, that's part of the gameplay that I was hoping to make something of. Probably also have the scary red glowing thing come at me. I keep forgetting that I was supposed to land on these in order to refuel. And so I keep running out of fuel to shoot or to anything. However, I'm moving in the direction of this guy, so my playthrough is probably not over yet. If I hit spacebar, I hit brakes even if I'm out of fuel, so that should probably allow me to not take damage from hitting this thing. Brakes. Right on. And gravity is a thing here. I'm being attracted by gravity, and I'm refueling. Should be refueling more than that, but nobody's perfect. There we go. There we go. Returning to full power. Let's see what else is going on here. Can we find this counterpart that I'm seeking? Like, the dispersion of all these giant rocks and tiny rocks has everything to do with the code that I wrote for instantiating this. Well, that's not firing any shots in any direction. So So it is not responding to me by shooting in the direction of the one that I'm seeking, and that may have to do with the fact that it doesn't know. And that's the same one it might have seen though. Okay, it has no idea. Oh, I'm at very low power. That's not Lilac Goth, but it has an idea where to go. It says go that way. Let's land on a rock and reload. That's jittering, which is not great. If you hit the rock too hard, you get blown up. Hey, full power. And here is the scary thing coming at me. I can see by the red glow. Oh, it nailed me. Okay, so that didn't work. And bouncing off of other rocks, a cornucopia of death. So if I do this, then I have the mouse available and I can close the game. So yeah, I admit, a little bit frustrated by this. I feel like let's make that a little bit smaller so we can see a little more of the actual game. And hopefully YouTube will continue to function. We shall see. So here's where we're figuring out what size all those rocks get to be. Now, what I am wondering in our startup up here, see, we're initializing all of that stuff. I feel like I should go and make myself another cup of espresso and then be confused and staring at my game with more energy. Also, I am due for, yeah, so maybe that's a good idea. Let's do a bunch of different things. Firstly, let's go and find stream audio. I'll pick a different piece of music this time. This will be feeding into the stream audio. We'll set it to the middle. I'm going to have more fire to make. It was so weird. Like last night, it was hanging around at about 60 degrees, and then it dropped and dropped and dropped until it was freezing around dawn, and it's supposed to stay freezing all day. So very weird. Very weird. But we'll fire this up, and I'm going to go and make my cup of espresso and throw a log on the fire, and we'll go from there. Which is going to be a little bit like this. Oh, that's a horrible place to start. Oh no. Let's not do that. Okay, that's better. It's not better. Oh dear. Well, this is a weird thing. We'll leave this going. I'll be right back with a cup of espresso, and we're going to get more into the Godot stuff. and trying to work out what those. Still experimenting a little bit. I'll be back in a So what's making that is, firstly, it's a big old modular synth. So it's doing a bunch of things with music thing, modular, what you call them, modules? The ones that do a random thing. They have a bunch of different kinds of outputs. You can have gate outputs. You can have a variable voltage output. And in this case, I've got these things kind of grinding through and generating sequences. It's not the radio music. It's not the chord organ. It's a different music thing, modular. You can actually get those in VCV Rack. The one that I'm thinking of that I can't name. It's a, it is a random generator module. So now I'm really confused. Now I want to know what these are. They're sitting right here. Oh, here it is. I went and looked it up. Turing machine. The stuff off of this that is a sequence that's coming off of a Turing machine module, I'm pretty sure. And it's triggering some sort of noise generation. That noise generation is probably just radio music sample players. I'm fortunate to have as many of those as I have because you can't make them anymore. They are based on a Teensy coprocessor that is no longer made. But yeah, and you've got a sort of thump happening. The thump is almost certainly doing a thing where I'm triggering it, but I'm delaying it so much that it's coming in ahead of the trigger again. It's slightly out of sync that way. It's hitting early rather than late. And I'm clearly doing a bunch of weird things with radio music for like the noise that's making could very easily be some kind of vocal noise even. but there's some reverb in there and stuff. And that's how that stuff is constructed. And it was all mixed on the fly to YouTube, because this was back in the day in 2020, in looks like November of 2020, when I'd spent a lot of time playing music live on YouTube to like nobody. And I would play for like 5 hours and then despair when everybody left, which is what happens in live streams. Like, that normally happens. But I didn't know that at the time. So I would freak out and be like, everybody hates me. They don't like my music. Just because there would be people occasionally. And this is when I had like 1/10 of the YouTube subscribers too. And that's just how it would go. So I made a series of recordings, improvising it live on YouTube with like funky flashing lights and things going on in my room as well. All for the purpose of trying to invent new kinds of music inspired by modular synthesizers. Well, 2020 was a simpler time in many ways. And I didn't have any of the tools I'm looking at now in terms of these meters and stuff. And so what I ended up with was things that were as good as I could make them at the time. But really, I had a lot to learn. And that is also why there's stuff like this. That is not a frog. That is a radio music module, which is a sample player module, being re-triggered really, really fast. And it's going a little slower. It's maybe going to a different place in the sample. So that was not me on stream. This whole thing is being made out of recordings of me on the radio music. And later I ended up running them all together so there was no spaces or breathing spaces, so that when you randomly seeked to different places in the recording, you'd get constantly a noise. And that's why it broke off into my voice there. It's because that entire noise is being made out of my voice as a rapidly repeating thing. Also, I clearly had my Erica Synth's delay working at this time. It ended up breaking. I haven't ended up getting it fixed yet. The ping pong delay, that is an Erica Synth's module. So yeah, voice coming off of a module, being re-triggered very, very quickly, and being run into a delay, which is at another speed or whatever, filling with that. And the reason it makes a noise that sounds kind of vocal but also sounds unrealistic and artificial is because it's doing that re-triggering thing. Now, what I'm hoping is people are going to be able to do that using Short Circuit XT, which is out now. And then if you want it to sound more like the module, you'd be filtering it or suppressing the extremes of it or something, because this is a lo-fi module. It's a 12-bit module. A little bit, yeah. COVID made a big effect. This is definitely during that time. That noise there is probably still a voice. Sounds like a drum, but it's probably a voice noise. And yeah, I was doing all kinds of stuff here. voice and snare. Thought I would make something out of that. Got a little more of a jam here. Yeah, I called this Batik Erotic, but I just jammed it and then named it afterward. Half this trick with stuff like that is getting it so that the underlying groove is working, and I would always spend a lot of time fiddling with that, which made it sound as if the jam was not evolving or progressing at all. This is all still me fooling with machines like all the time for nearly all of the sound. I was plugging and unplugging stuff the whole time and fooling with it like mad, but it's still also, you can see on that one that I've got them mixed together finally. Particularly on the bottom meter, you see a spread of blue stuff down low, which means it's balancing out fairly well for low frequencies, although it does go a little deeper than it needs to. And then the high frequencies, there's a click or hat kind of sound, probably the kick, honestly. And that is producing that white spot because there is more highs on that kick that I would never normally do. And the hat is probably filling in a bunch of the cyan colored things. So the whole thing balances fairly well. And with that, I'll move on to going back to Godot because I have my espresso now. It came out pretty good. The espresso, I mean, the jam was ridiculous. Again, I'm still developing this card game for being able to get back into that zone and not be stuck for ideas. And I'm hoping if that's the thing, then I can share it with other people. Which means being able to sell it because I can't simply give away physical objects. But if I can make the cards, I could also give away the graphics files used to make them. And then it would be, if anybody wanted desperately not to help me out in any way by buying the cards, what they could do is print them out for themselves. Like send them off somewhere and get them printed. And that seems about as fair as anybody could ask. Now here's where we're at with the video game. Video game does this sort of thing. And when we are at level 70, we can be... I've been reacquainting myself with the details of how this works. For instance, if you fly over to a rock, gravity will attract you to the rock slightly. But also you can fly over land on it if you don't hit it too hard. And that refuels you, but it also draws the attention of the glowing thing that comes and hurts you. That thing there. That is bad news. But if it can't see you, it stops being as upset. I have not really considered selling t-shirts that much. That's one of the things that you could do using like YouTube's eagerness to have you selling merch off of your YouTube channel. but when they do that, it's never a really very good version of it. If I was wanting to sell t-shirts in a serious way, I'd probably want to make them myself. Ah. Okay. That one says go this way. Let's question these guys as to where to go. That rock is going to get blown up in a moment. Oh! Hi. I found it. That was the one I was meant to find. One of the things I wanted to do was get a better texture for these. One that had like normals on it. That's going to be a lot of work. Good espresso. I'm dialing in the grind for that pretty effectively. I can't have any more espresso today, it would be too much. So if this thing... See, I bounced off of it, so I reloaded. So the thing I don't like about this is that all of these giant rocks are way too giant. I would like to have megastructures, but I don't want it to be only asteroids. For one, you shoot asteroids, they blow up into smaller asteroids, and it gets real busy. But also, I would not want transfers. It would have to be screen printing. I'm not really there yet. Boy, back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I mean like a solid 30, 40 years ago, I knew a guy who was doing screen printing. I'm not sure how he's doing these days. It's been too long. It's possible to go and find people who are trying to make a living doing screen printing and talk to them. So one of the things I was thinking, first thing off of the top of my mind was maybe not have so many damn rocks. So the part of the code that we're looking at here is new level. That sets the size of the universe. This clears everything in the bots node and everything in the rocks node, although we still have stuff in the physics engine that is left over. What the game is about is a process that is being explored every day I do make it. And I have a number of thoughts around that. One of the things I'd like to see is more in the way of megastructures, given that I have a situation where I've got this world size and then a sort of distance fog, and the number of asteroids in the world is larger than it looks. Like the world size isn't as huge as it appears, but the rocks have instances in every direction. And the instances are more easily rendered. Now the downside to that is the instances don't get the rotation of the regular rocks, and that is disappointing, but I haven't solved that yet. But they do render visually, meaning that I can have way more things on screen and get away with it. So you're making yourself, and then we're making one single counterpart, which is a particular texture. Now, the thing about that is, that means I'm randomly selecting a texture out of the range of possible options. And that is out of here. This is the Finder category, and this is all the stuff. Here's a bunch of sounds that are making up the sounds of the game. Things like rock albedo. That is the surface of the asteroids, although it's really a noise texture, so honestly it's not that good as far as a asteroid texture. But And then we've got things like that. That is our background to look cool. THX Fuzz Frizz. What's that about? Oh, okay. That is our scary monster. And then we've got this folder. And this folder is filled with all of the colors of all of those bots. And we start randomly generating them. And we pick one to start with. These are not very large textures. Here's deep green sea. They're tiling textures that got generated by something on my old Snow Leopard computer. And even at that, this is a program to generate these that only ran on PowerPC machines. And so it's pre-Intel, this program. And these are all the backgrounds. So you're a character that you fly around in space with. Is one of these textures looking for another one of these textures? They're all very small, but this is also data. So all of the bots follow a path that is going to a position based on RGB values sequentially along every pixel of this texture. It kind of scrolls from top to bottom and left to right and just reads through in a cycling kind of way. So they will go to all these different places, and that's why they gather together, and that's why they seem to be taking their own paths to things. If they were moving faster, it would be much more interesting to look at. And some of them, like these guys, are going to hang out all in one location because the location they try to go to is an RGB color expressed as physical location. Since there's three values to go to, and there are 3 dimensions to place things at. So what I was thinking was I could presumably do mega textures by picking the one that you start with. For instance, supposing that it's this one. And let's say we assume that we have a height and width that is like 200, I think this is 256 by 256. 256 universe sizes, meaning that if you used the across and down as a sort of map, then you'd have novel things for each space. Here's a more novel thing. If you had that as a kind of map, every pixel in there across a sort of 2D plane, not 3D yet, but 2D, could be representing either some kind of coded object or a position within the space for something to be. And that would make it persistent. And so then the question becomes, how do you make a megastructure out of a plan like that where you have a map? And the map can simply, it's easier to deal with that kind of thing if you're thinking in terms of mostly going sideways. Like, although you can do it, I haven't really designed this in such a way that you're expected to go vertically. You can. It's possible. There's no limit to how far you can go that way, but it's not really designed to do that. Meaning you could have something designed with because the other challenge there is, it's very much procedural generation. But I'm thinking in terms of like, how can I make megastructures based on a little map like that, where, like, you see this tiny little area here, you might or might not be able to see it. That's a black spot in the middle of a blue area with a red area next to it. If black represented nothing there, there could be a whole bunch of pixels, which would translate to a whole bunch of world sizes, because every time we traverse the boundaries of the world, we can increment a number or decrement a number. And in so doing, we would be just traversing the dimensions of the world with our little asteroid fields in them, but going vast, vast distances and seeing like the megastructures be the way they are. So there's a catch. If I define large objects that are defined as solid physical objects, I can render them in the distance quite easily. I can persistently render these. I can render them off in the distance. The instances will not interact with them because the instances are just phantoms, basically. And so I can just make something that's larger than the size of the render distance, and that would generate a megastructure. What it would be doing is basically zooming in on this. Let's see, let's open this with preview. Here we are. So this is the area I was talking about. So if there was like a giant cube, the color of each of these things, unless it was black, inside each of these world spaces, you'd be traveling around with sort of different colored cubes showing up. And this area black would be, you'd be going through a whole bunch of world spaces until you arrived at one where, oh look, there's a giant blue cube in the middle of this space. Thing is, as soon as you got close enough to that, and it came into the space that you were in, what would happen is any of the rocks or any of the bots occupying that space, the physics engine would snap them to on the boundary of that space. And we could play with this and see what it acts like. Like here would be a scenario where different shades of white, green rather. You'd have a green thing and then a much brighter green thing over there. You'd be able to see two different green things if you're in this vicinity. But then if you went this far away from it, you'd no longer be able to see that one because it's beyond the, view distance is about this big. So if you're on that one, you could see some of the things in the distance. If I contrived a way to have them attached to each other, so you'd have a real literal megastructure, that could get interesting. Trouble is, if the megastructure takes up too much space, then you can no longer really, like the asteroids and things don't really work in conjunction with it. Because again, imagine that square is the size of the world, the universe that we are in. You're able to see asteroids 1 pixel in every direction, and then the way it's working is you've got this little cube around the world space. So there's instances of all the asteroids in every direction that you look. And there's instances of all the bots in every direction that you look. That's what makes it look like there's more of them there than there are. But then the green dot at the top where that boundary is, there's one additional instance of asteroids above, below, left, right, front, back. And it's just on the edge of things. And then the corners of that, there's no instances there because it's beyond the view distance. And as you move, you go to a different area. For instance, in here, no objects present because it's just black. So this is a big empty zone. Go far enough, however, all of a sudden there's this blue color, which could represent something. You could have the blue color coded to be like, this shade of blue is a particular spaceship that is there. That shade of blue is a particular something else. I would love to procedurally generate the structures because I've been procedurally generating frickin' everything so far. I'd also like to have them be in the physics engine. The challenge there is having them be on some kind of... it would have to be like in the rocks subcategory or in the bot subcategory where I'd be able to scan what the megastructures were. Because, like, supposing you're in here, you've got a bunch of blue structures or blue contexts for what the structure would be, or up here, even brighter blue. And then you go to here, all of a sudden, now you're entirely in red land. It's only red structures. The blue structures have to be not there anymore. They're way past the view distance at this stage. And we're cheating all of this. Like, if you were here, then the world area is that much. If you're here, the world area is still like 0 to 612 or so, and your view distance is to about 1,000. All of the objects are still at that space. The way this is done to make the big view structures is as soon as you cross a boundary in, say, this direction, all the megastructures get randomly bumped in this direction to move in on your space. You go from one square to the next square instantaneously, and all the other stuff is just instances. So you are suddenly seeing a different object, but it looks exactly the same as the previous object, thus fooling you. All the objects are spaced in a grid that's exactly world-size spaced. And that's how that works. So you could have a giant sculpted, pre-modeled thing that looked gorgeous and beautiful and amazing as long as you bumped it like world size in the direction you're going. And then what would happen is all the rocks that were occupying that space, they would have to either not be there anymore when the object suddenly is intersecting them, or get moved by the physics engine to the outside edge. There's experiments that we can do to fool with this that could well be worth trying. And yeah, like the dimensions of that is roughly view distance, and you'd be able to travel all the way to here, and these are wrapping textures. So this does get to be an infinite space with a great deal of variety. Think of these colors as kind of like Minecraft biomes. And it's a question of what I can do within a procedural form, because that's also the trick, is for each level you were assigned a new texture. They can be very different. They can have common features, like this is a particular shade of blue, that's pretty much all there is. This is a relatively unvarying yellow, that's pretty much all there is. This one has very strikingly different colors and a repeating pattern, so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, it's tricky, but that's what makes it fun and interesting. That one has very low contrast. That one has very little difference between areas. It's very blurry. And that's one with a bunch of dark areas. Yeah. It works great for Minecraft, and we do have the ability to zip about in this. And yeah, and we have many different colors to go with. We've got lots of different stuff. for instance, there's a picture. That's one of the possible bot textures. It's also a possible texture that you could have. And my idea there is the texture that you have determines what the macro scale of the universe is. So that is a very contrasty texture. Big changes in what each area would be like. But what it would mean is if you're traveling more or less side to side rather than vertically, every pixel of that can represent a state of the universe space. And it would change from large areas of just all white to large areas of all black with some colored pixels on the edges. And just all these very strikingly different sections. So if it was completely procedurally, it would be figuring out like, how do we make there be visual and or physical objects that follow these rules? How much area would be taken up by the megastructure versus the emptiness? I like the idea of black typically meaning darkness, meaning empty space for that. But then there's whole areas where there is no darkness whatsoever. And yet it's a consistent color. So the color is also going to have a factor. And there's repeating patterns and stuff there. That's one where if you have different color coding for things, that is a very chaotic universe. There is a little bit of local similarity, but it's almost raw noise. And that is a very consistent universe. There's very little difference between the edges. And that is a very speckly one, where it's an extremely noisy texture, and there's a lot of scatter, there's a lot of pixelation. There's a fairly pretty one with fairly high intensity saturation. And all of these are textures you can have. See, there's a similarity there. So we have a bunch of different, I'm thinking it's going to be 128 textures I've got in here, or a little more, because there's 258 instances of objects in the Finder, and some of those objects are the Godot loading stuff. But yeah, so the idea is we already have this as part of the game. That is the texture on the object that you're seeking, the bot that you're seeking, and that is the texture that is on you. And so it's also being used as a path for bots to pursue, whether that means, like that's one where, ooh, we've got two very similar ones there. Those are ones that are very dark, and the bots that are following those are all sitting in pretty much the same place. Here's one where the bots will mostly be hanging out in that one location. And maybe that, I'm trying to think of whether there's any basis to having the texture that you want determining the location of the megastructure, because then that will mean the bot that you're looking for will try to go to that location in space. And if the megastructure always places something at that location, then anyway, it's a thought. Pollux palette, that's another very speckly one. That's one where every adjacent pixel is going to be strikingly different, and there could be something interesting to that. And yeah, good thought, Chad. You could have hostile enemies in hostile areas, cool colors could be friendly, etc. These are all available things within the context of what we're trying to do. That's one with a striking contrast between areas. That's a big contrast in hue. So yeah. So where do we start with megastructures? I feel like one of the ways we could start with megastructures I'm also listening and I feel like I hear something happening, but it might be like something going on outside. It's not the stove. The stove is doing fine. So first thing, if we play this, we're back to, this is our megastructures. Our megastructures are destructible because our megastructures are literally giant rocks. So that's what this game currently does, is our universe is just rocks. And a very angry red thing that chases us. So that's half the point of this. The rocks can all bounce off of each other. We've got that thing, which does hit rocks itself, but you want to avoid it. And it will kill you if it hits you. And the more you shoot asteroids, the more Mr. Dude comes in and attacks you. Also, I'm out of power now. So here's where we're at for the moment, is waiting to see if one of the asteroids touches me before that thing kills me. And no, it killed me. It's supposed to be hard to do. This is not supposed to be easy to just go infinitely. You're supposed to be engaged by paying attention to certain things. I'm not actually doing that at this time. Also, give me a second. I've been drinking coffee. I'm gonna do a quick pit stop and I'll be right back. Refreshed. So you see what I mean about this. megastructures, but they're giant rocks. And they are important. You reload based on them. You can blow them up, producing large numbers of instances. And then you can see off in the distance essentially the same cluster of rocks. If I keep going in this direction, there is yet another instance of the same cluster of rocks, and so on. Like, it looks like it goes on forever, but it really does not. And that's a fundamental thing of this particular game, is the idea to make the sense of being in infinite space, but it's a fake infinite space. It is not really infinite. However, here's the thing. I was looking to refuel on that, but it got away. I could use up less fuel. Like, literally all of this is completely malleable. That's the point that I'm trying to make. As long as you don't hit it too hard, it doesn't give you any damage. And that flick that it does is getting into the region. I hit it too hard. Let's reload. Everything is all one figure. It's your fuel, your zaps, your damage, all one figure. So I can make it burn fuel less. We can have you either gain points by shooting asteroids or not. That's another possibility. Is it could be, at one point this was a game of like empty all the asteroids in the field, and the numbers start increasing very rapidly, meaning that it's much harder to deal with anything. And then if you're shooting at the bot, see, there's only one bot. Here it is. Actually, there's more, but this is the one you're looking for. And so now I get to go on to the next level. And I have to reload because I'm at 34%. So that part is legit. We can keep it that you have to go find the rocks in order to reload. But the idea is, like, megastructures should be taking up as much conceptual space as this. But I'm no longer that interested in having it literally be only giant asteroids. I feel like there should be more than just that. As fun as it is to blow up all of the asteroids, you can kind of see off in the distance there. And then I've also set it up so that thing becomes very angry when you shoot the big rocks. And so that is my main danger. The main danger is that thing coming and killing me. Set up so that if I do full blast, I can go around corners. And that's not realistic at all, but it's more fun if the game acts like it's a Star Wars game rather than a literal modeling of a spaceship. Because if you're blasting away, I wouldn't mind having it set up so you can go faster too, because here's the thing, if I fly straight into one of these, I die. So that should be more of a risk. be set up so that you might have to be careful about what direction you go. So, there are several levels of question. Oh, that was the one I was looking for. So there's several levels of question. One of them is, let's have megastructures that serve the purpose of these giant rocks without being literally the destructible giant rocks. Let's have there be more capacity for moving fast if we have megastructures that take longer to get around. And let's continue to have these rocks being here. You can plainly see how they're here, but then we're also looking off into the distance, and that is an instance. The big one over there. You can go to it. I can go to that. That is an instance. Go close enough to it, it becomes the real one. All right, let's see if we are literally between these two. No, apparently not. Is this one up here literal? Nope, that was imaginary. Yeah, so that's also the problem with having these so big. They're being rendered, and sometimes what's getting visibly rendered isn't actually there. It's too big, so we're attempting to approach one that doesn't actually exist in real space. This, on the other hand, probably does. Yep. So that was physical, but some of these giant ones, not physical. Okay, so that's smarted. So these two that are this close to each other, that's rendering problems having to do with some of them are instances, and they are being done at such a large scale because they're trying to play the role of megastructures, and they're not. So we're going to quit out of there. So here's, and also the thing about megastructures is if I do megastructures in certain ways, I could have them also include sound generation. So we could have other instruments enter into the background music based on what megastructure is there. And there's lots of possibilities with that. But here we are at rock size. Here's the generation. We do this loop. And we start with what is effectively, rock size is effectively always starting at the largest possible size. In fact, I'm not sure we have, no, there's a rock size, so the level gets manipulated here. Rock size is int rock size times 0.5 plus square root level times 0.12f. The way I calculated this out was making it so that the super high levels were just rammed with rocks. So let's test that out. High levels also have more bots. The original intention was to make it harder to find the bot that you're looking for. The bots move a little faster at higher levels. Here's level 700. And world space is just more full of rocks at these high levels. I calculated it out that way to make it so that space was just cluttered. Space is just cluttered at high levels. And so here we are. At a high level, the bots are moving the rocks around more because they have physics instances. If you start shooting rocks, you wind up with larger numbers of rocks, but we've started at 129 rocks. That's because